This is child Link yearning for the mines, the coal mines, because that's what children do. So, Cold Beet Soup is a podcast for casual fans who want to explore lore and fandom rabbit holes in music and gaming.
And are sad sometimes.
Are we live? Are we?
Yeah.
I had my thumbs up
I just stay
for like
quiet
a
for 10
doofus.
minutes.
Yeah, I thought you were frozen for a second. I was like, hello?
Just end the call.
Yeah, seriously. I'm like, okay, I'll call back. So, yeah, today, we're continuing with Zelda. The lore is quite a bit, so I was debating on splitting up the child timeline or doing the child and adult timeline together. But I decided against that because even though the child timeline is only three games, two out of the three games are one is set like Majora's Mask is set in a parallel world called Termina, and Twilight Princess deals with the Twilight Realm, which we talked about briefly, but it's still like there's a bit more explanation that I have to do for someone that doesn't know anything about Zelda. So,
Mhm.
and the final game, Four Sword Adventures, it's uh adding on to the Four Sword trilogy. So we talked about Four Sword already, so it's kind of you'll see some similarities. It's not
Okay.
too bad. But let me just put up my I won't be able to see Vicky's face anymore, but this is the first slide
Oh, hell yeah.
I waited to show you. I
Oh,
used
hell
my
yeah.
art skills. Yeah, my art skills. This is child Link yearning for the mines, the coal mines, because that's what children do. So thanks, PowerPoint. I didn't even like change the border. You could see like a thin blue border. I was like, nah, good enough.
It's
She'll
perfect. It's
get it.
beautiful. I love it.
Thank you. So the timeline, it's really short. I used that same screenshot from the encyclopedia that I did for the last episode. Also, for those of you tuning in, and if this is your first episode of the podcast, I highly recommend you listen to the other two, just because all of the episodes kind of build upon each other. We started with that first portion of the timeline before it splits into three. We did the darkest timeline the episode prior, and now it's the child timeline. And since I explained a lot of characters to Vicky already, I don't have to re-explain. Um, so if you're like a brand new beginner, you might be a little lost if you don't listen to the other two. So we start off for this particular timeline. If you remember, at the end of Ocarina of Time, Zelda sends Link back in time 7 years so he can live out his childhood because he missed out on it. He was sealed away for 7 years, so
Mm.
he didn't get to live
He
out his
didn't he didn't
childhood.
get to
So
mine.
he didn't get to mine. It's truly tragic.
Yeah.
So he wanted to make his $1 an hour. Feel the coal in his lungs. All right, I'm gonna stop. So, so the first thing he does when he comes back is actually he warns the royal family that Ganondorf is not who he says he is. He's a bad guy. He's gonna do bad stuff. So because he warns them of the plan before the plan actually happens, um, he doesn't really have to be a hero or save anyone. I mean, they know Ganondorf's bad, so he can just kind of go and do his own thing, and that's exactly what he does. He decides to leave Hyrule and go look for Navi. Now, Navi, if you remember, was Link's fairy in Ocarina of Time.
Mm.
So, he goes back in time. He doesn't have the fairy anymore. There's a couple layers of this. The one, it's kind of the obvious one where it's like, oh, well, Navi was his friend. He played through the whole game with her. She knows what he went through. Um, but there's another part that I didn't really touch on in the first presentation when I brought up Ocarina of Time. So in Ocarina of Time, if you remember, Link's mom leaves him in the Kokiri forest, and he's like raised to be one of them. but he doesn't really fit in with them because he kind of stands out a little bit. He's first of all, he's like bigger than them because they're like sprites, they're like little people. But the second thing is all of them have a fairy that's like part of their, I guess, culture. Like they each get their own fairy companion, and Link never got one. So he already like felt kind of excluded, and then this was just another layer of it. So when Navi came along, he finally was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm one of them." But then he finds out, I mean, he really was never one of them, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." But that was I think that's an important thing to mention, just because like she's more than just like a guard, just someone telling him what to do. She was a friend. So that's why he goes and looks for her. So he gets on his horse, he leaves Hyrule, and now we're getting into Majora's Mask. I wanted to kind of set the story. So we're going to start with this guy who he is the Happy Mask salesman. Now, looking at his picture, and even in the game, because he does show up in other games, he looks super sus.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought he was really creepy. Um, there's no indication in any canon that he's a bad, like he's an antagonist or anything, but he just looks creepy. Um, so his whole shtick is just like he's a traveling salesman who finds masks all over the world. Like that's just what he does. Um, and he was in the woods looking for masks, and he gets ambushed by someone known as the Skull Kid, who we're going to talk about more. Because Skull Kid ends up being the main antagonist in the game. Skull Kid and his two friends, Tattle and Tail, who are also fairies. They look kind of like Navi, but I think, like one of them's purple and the other's like yellowish. But they ambush him, and while he's unconscious, Skull Kid steals Majora's mask. And then it turns out Majora's mask is not just any old mask, it has like evil powers. Um, Basically this mask, it's like an ancient powerful artifact that it used to be used by some ancient tribe. Nintendo never says what the tribe is, but it's just a tribe, and they used it for their hexing rituals, and the power was just so great that they like sealed it in this mask. And unfortunately when Skull Kid put it on, uh he became possessed. So that's, it's not great. It gets even worse. So
Nice. Hell
Skull
yeah.
Kid, yeah, this timeline is actually kind of dark. I know we talked about the darkest timeline, but going over this one, this game and the next game, I would say are pretty dark. Um, so this is Skull Kid with the mask. Um, Several months later, so this happens, he steals the mask. Several months later, Link is searching for Navi in the woods. Skull Kid and his friends ambush Link this time, and they steal Link's horse and his Ocarina of Time. So that is not great for Link. It gets even worse because he chases after the Skull Kid, and he gets turned into that, what you see on the slide here. It's known as a Deku scrub. Deku, they're just like common creatures in the Zelda games. The mouth that you see, like usually they can like shoot out pellets or water.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they're those guys.
I've
Like they're
seen them,
usually in
yeah.
the water. Yeah, and they like pop out. So he gets turned into one of those. Um, which is that sucks for him. So he's not having a great day. So he gets left behind, and so does Tattle. So Tattle and Tail, the two fairy friends that Skull Kid has, they're actually brother and sister. So Tattle is the sister, and somehow they get separated. So Tattle is kind of stuck with Link. She tags along with him because she knows, okay, he's gonna eventually go back to find the Skull Kid. But at first, she's really mean to him. She's like, I need to get back to see my brother and Skull Kid, and like you're just being slow. So she's kind of mean at first, but she comes around. So they make their way out, and they actually end up being inside of a clock tower. This clock tower is in Termina, which, as I mentioned, it's just a parallel world to Hyrule. And the clock tower is like in their main square, town square. I think it's actually called Clock Town. um, but inside that clock tower, they run into the Happy Mask Salesman, and the Happy Mask Salesman sees Link, and he's like, "Oh, well, I can help you turn back to who you were if you get me back Majora's Mask, and you need to get back your Ocarina of Time. But you only have 3 days to do it because I'm a traveling salesman, so I just can't be hanging around here. Like I got places to be and masks to sell." And Link's like, "Okay." So he goes and searches for Skull Kid. Now, when he walks out of the clock tower,
Oh.
this is what he sees. So, as you can tell, this is not a normal scene for most people. That is the moon coming down on Termina. The Skull Kid is the cause of this. So he's corrupted by the mask, and he actually aims to destroy Termina by crashing the moon on it. And this apocalypse, you only have 3 days to stop it. So it's another, similar thing. You have this time constraint. Um, I want to provide some context because if you start the game, they don't really explain. Maybe they had a cutscene about this, about how Skull Kid made friends, but Skull Kid just kind of seems kind of unhinged. I mean, I know he got the mask, so that's a huge component of like him kind of going crazy. But another thing is in Termina, Skull Kid was known to be like a trickster. He would like play pranks on people, so people in the village didn't really like him. He was friends with the four giants. The four giants are like the deities in the game. They're like
Mm.
the guardians. They're just really big giants. They protect Termina, and they have some sort of like a falling out. I don't exactly remember what it was, but so Skull Kid kind of felt neglected. He did, if I remember correctly, he was in the forest one day and like Tattle and Tail found him and they like, you know, huddled together and kept him warm. So like they became friends in that way. But I think that kind of helps explain it a bit more because just off the jump it's just kind of like, oh, it's just some crazy kid who the mask really corrupted him. But there's like another layer where it's like, oh, he kind of feels like nobody in Termina cares about him, so he just went kind of 0 to 100 with it of like, oh, no one likes me, so I'm just gonna destroy your town. But I thought it was uh interesting to note, and it's kind of sad and depressing, and we do say we're sad sometimes, so
Yep.
I wanted to mention that. So
He can join the
Link
club.
does, yeah, he's one of the sad, he's part of our sad club. He's welcome to join. We're always accepting applications.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So Link, that's the clock tower on the slide. It's the one with like the big wheel on it. That's the clock. So he
Oh, okay.
comes actually he yeah, he gets to the top of it, and that's where Skull Kid is. So that's where he has his first like face off with him. And Skull Kid is holding the ocarina at the time. Um, and Link kind of tricks him. He learns like some bubble attack, so he like hits Skull Kid. Skull Kid drops the ocarina, and when Link picks it up, he actually has a flashback to when Zelda gave him the ocarina and she taught him the Song of Time. The Song of Time, she basically told him like, if anything happens to you and you're like in a jam, the goddess of time will come to your aid. Like if you play this song, she'll help you out. So this was he was in a jam, so he did play that song, and he managed to teleport himself back 3 days. So this is an interesting part of the game. I actually rage quit this game because I didn't know about this, so I progressed through a bunch of stuff and I ran out of time. I didn't know about this part of it, so I just thought like I lost a bunch of progress. Um, but with the game, it's you kind of go in those 3 day increments. So like you go and do some dungeon or something, save, and then like you go back in time, but you have saved your progress and you just kind of go around. It frustrated me just because I like to explore and like look at stuff, and that's a lot of Zelda is like, exploration and chatting,
Mm.
different villagers and stuff. Especially with like Breath of the Wild where it's just open. So I was frustrated with the fact that like, oh, I only have 3 days to do something, so like don't waste time. But I will get back to this game eventually. I know I'll try it again. Now that I know how it works. And I think the storyline is pretty cool. But anyways, yeah, so he plays that song. Him and Tattle do come back. I forgot to mention one thing. When he's talking to Skull Kid, uh Tail, the brother, is like, "Hey, Tattle, go to the four corners of Termina and get the giants, like free the giants." I guess the giants were kind of captured, and I don't know if Skull Kid had something to do with that. I suspect he did. And then when he actually says that, Skull Kid like pimp slaps him, like, "Shut up." And
Dang.
yeah, and it's kind of like, oh shit, like you could tell like the fairies could tell they're like, oh no, like this is really bad. Like he's not himself. Because usually, playing jokes is one thing, but like actually hitting your friends, like that's
Right.
a whole other thing. So, when they get teleported back, Tattle decides to stay with Link for the rest of the journey. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna stick with you and help you figure this out because I feel like Skull Kid's, in a bad way and we need to help him get out of that headspace. So he comes back in time. He does go to the Happy Mask salesman who asks him, "Oh, did you get Majora's mask?" And Link's like, "No." And the Happy Mask salesman actually like shakes him. He's like, "You need to get that mask back." And Link's like, "I know, chill." But he still helps him. He's still because he sees he got the ocarina, so he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna play the Song of Healing for you." And for something we've never talked about in the Zelda games, I already mentioned the Song of Time. There's also the Song of Healing. Throughout the different games, I don't know, I don't think it's all of them, but any game I think where you have an ocarina, you can play different songs and they do different things. So like the Song of Time lets you travel in time. The Song of Healing supposedly heals your soul. But it also gives peace to those who can't forget. So if it's like some spirit trapped or something, but then the result of it is you get a mask. And as you can
Ooh.
see, yeah, this is like a still from the game. You can get 24 masks total. And you see in the top right, you have that Deku mask. So once he healed Link, Link could still turn himself back into a Deku scrub if he wanted. And the way the game goes is like you go along and you find different masks, and then you use them in creative ways, to solve puzzles and progress through the game. Um, so Link, goes and he goes to those four regions. He frees the four giants. Um, by the way, the giants every year, I thought this was like a cool fact. In Termina, they kind of they have this thing called the Carnival of Time, and they ask the four giants like for a rich harvest, and they'll will wear masks of them to like honor them. So that's kind of like part of their culture. The giants are kind of funky looking. This is a slide with them holding up the moon. They've just
Oh.
got like these long legs. Yeah, so like this game and Ocarina of Time came out on Nintendo 64, so that's why the graphics look like that.
Mm.
Um, but it's so interesting like how different in vibe they are. Like I feel like Ocarina is more of like a typical, adventure game, but I feel like Majora's Mask is pretty dark, like because the whole time you're playing, you see like this moon looming over you, and then like Skull Kid, the Majora's Mask is kind of scary looking, like so yeah, it's just very interesting how like the games came out on the same console, but it just have very different feelings to them. So yeah, as you can tell from the slide, though, the four giants do hold up the moon, so they stop the moon from crashing. Um, the Majora's Mask kind of sees the plan not working, so he actually like leaves Skull Kid's face and is like, "F this noise," and shoots up into the moon. And Link follows him up there and does like a final battle to beat Majora. Now, I watched part of like my research is I'll watch cutscenes of the game to just kind of like make sure with Wiki and Reddit, like what do the players see? just visually and just to help with like the storytelling. So I watched like him going up into the moon and like this boss battle is three phases and some of they're like kind of scary. Like you start with the mask, but then it like grows legs and shit and it's like
Oh.
holy crap. Like I can't imagine being a kid, in I think this was the 90s and like going up and playing this. Like it must have been really scary and challenging. But anyways, I mean Link wins as he does, except for the sad timeline. Um, so the evil leaves the mask, so he can give it back to the happy mask salesman. The moon goes back to its normal place, not super close, trying to crash. Tattle and Tail are reunited, as you can see in the slide. Skull Kid is all good. He's back to normal, and there's peace in Termina. So Link, he's all done. He leaves to continue to search for Navi. One kind of sad thing, though, is that this particular Link, because Link gets reincarnated,
Hmm.
um, he's never seen alive again. We don't hear from this Link ever again. So that's
Oh.
like we don't know if he ever found Navi. We don't know anything, but you may see him again in a different form. We'll talk about that soon. So that was Majora's Mask. Now we're getting into Twilight Princess. I love this game. I think I mentioned to you, I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before, but how the art style is like it's so cool. So I try to include some like cool stills from the game for you so you can see it. But yeah, so basically with this game, you go back a couple years after Ocarina of Time when Ganondorf is sentenced to death. The sages are trying to carry out his execution, but Ganondorf somehow survives. Actually, he has his like chains on, like you see in the slide, but his Triforce activates. He has the Triforce of power, and it like activates. So he has like a sword in him, and he like pulls a sword out, kills one of the sages, and the sages are like, "Oh shit, we gotta do something."
God
So they pull
damn.
out yeah, because the Triforce of Power you get a lot of strength. So he
Right,
was just
right.
like, ah, and they're like, oh my God. So they use the Mirror of Twilight, which is it's kind of just like a portal really,
Mm.
to banish him into the Twilight Realm. Now the Twilight Realm we talked about in the first episode with it was the era of chaos where there were those interloper sorcerer people that came and
Okay.
they got banished there too.
Mm.
So this is like years after. So the interlopers are no more, but they have their descendants known as the Twilight. So this is
Ooh.
a few of the important figures. Midna in the middle, gorgeous, love her. She's the Twilight Princess, so she's part of the royal family. Now the guy on the left is going to be one of our main antagonists in this game. His name is Zant. Now Zant he thinks that the throne belongs to him. He's kind of like he thinks that he should be in charge. A. B. He doesn't like the fact that they're in the Twilight Realm. He feels like they're imprisoned. They should be able to go to Hyrule. It's not fair. So he's a servant to the royal family, but he feels like he should be in charge and he's very disgruntled. So years later after Ganondorf is banished, he actually appears before Zant in like a kind of like a spooky ghostly form and he's like, "Hey, you want power? I can give you power." So Zant takes some of Ganon's power and he uses it to usurp Midna and take the throne for himself. He also transforms her to that character on the right, a little imp, and he also like takes her powers away because she has some like magical powers as the princess. So now she's like this little imp. Although I love Midna in her imp form because I think she's very cute and sassy. So that all happens. Midna flees to Hyrule to try and figure out a way to save her kingdom. Zant decides to invade Hyrule. He also transforms all of the Twilight people into shadow beasts.
Oh.
I will show you what they look like on the next slide because they are pretty scary looking. And he invades. He uses the shadow beast to steal the light from the spirits of the light. The spirits of the light are just spirits that watch over the four provinces. It's a similar thing. You have like sages, maidens, light spirits, there's always like the guardians, the giants, there's some sort of guardians in Hyrule that kind
Mm.
of protect the different regions, and usually the bad guy takes something away from them. So when he takes the light away, he brings Twilight to Hyrule. And what that means is like people get turned into either like beasts, shadow beasts, or like actually, I don't know if they get turned into shadow beasts specifically, but I do know that they get turned into like little spirits. So as you're playing the game, you just see like little glowing lights, and if you tap on the light, you see like a person, and they kind of like don't know that they're like not dead, but they're just kind of spirits. So it's not great for Hyrule. Princess Zelda is held captive. You can see that from the slide here. He actually comes up to her and he's like, "You have a choice: surrender or die." And then she has her sword and she like drops it, and it's a very dramatic. It's like, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So
So what did she pick? Did she pick C?
surrender. Surrender. That's why she dropped her sword, because she's like, I'm not gonna fight. Like, because she
Psh,
she prob. I mean, I think that
lame.
Zelda. Pussy. No, I think I think Zelda, because Zelda reincarnates all the time too. I think she kind of knows like someone's gonna come along, probably Link, and save us. She's like, I just have to hold off. Um. So yeah, that's all shitty for Hyrule. You see, these are the shadow beasts. That's what they look like. They are so creepy. I don't like them.
Yeah, it looks like from Scooby Doo, the in real life version, where they go to the island.
Oh, it's been so long since I've seen that movie. It's been so long, so I don't remember. The only Scooby-Doo I remember is that one with the movie with the witches. Remember the like witches band?
Oh yeah, yeah,
They were like a
that's
yeah.
animated. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's animated, but I don't remember any of the live action. That's like out of my memory banks. But I believe you. I could see that being in Scooby-Doo. It's
Yeah.
just like ugh, ugh. So in this game, Link is a ranch hand. So I know other games he's been a blacksmith, but in this one he's just a ranch hand. Um he was pursuing Bulblins. Bulblins really just kind of look like little goblin creatures. They're just basic enemies in the game. They decided to kidnap some children of the village, so Link was like chasing after them. He gets knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, no one's around, so he runs off into the forest looking for them, but he instead sees like a big black wall blocking his path. And as he gets closer to it, a large black hand pulls him in, and it
Oh.
turns out it's a shadow beast that pulled him in. So he's being strangled by a shadow beast, and all of a sudden his Triforce activates. He has the Triforce of Courage, and which makes the shadow beast drop him because he's like, ah, light, ew, yuck. And then Link gets tossed to the side, and he transforms into a wolf.
Oh.
And the transformation like hurts him so much that he passes out because he just changed. Now, I also wondered. I was like, why did he turn into a wolf? Like, what's the reason? So, um Hyrule was, under Twilight, and Twilight makes people transform. So Link turned into his wolf form, because, well, most people turn into spirits, but because he is the hero of time and has a Triforce of Courage, he transformed into a wolf. So he didn't, lose his strength. So it was like one reason is, okay, the Triforce of Courage protected him. The second reason is actually in the Twilight, they have with the Twilight people, they have like this prophecy that a divine beast will one day save them. So wolves are beasts, so it makes sense. So that's why he got transformed. He gets dragged away and thrown into prison in Hyrule. So he's imprisoned in Hyrule Castle, and that's where Midna runs into him. So this is Wolf Link. I think he looks sick,
Yeah, it
and
does.
he's cool, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
in the game, you can switch between like later you'll be able to switch between like his wolf and normal form. So it's
Okay.
kind of cool. Like in the final battle, you choose like wolf form or his real form. But yeah, it's cool. You get different like mechanisms with it. But he's in his prison cell and Midna finds him and she's kind of like sassy and silly, but if she's like if you can escape your cell, I'll help you, escape the prison. So you like dig yourself out of the cell, and she doesn't really tell him who she is, but she's just like, we're gonna work together now. And so they work to restore light back to Hyrule. In the game, you're just looking for tears of light. They're just like they look like little teardrops, and they
Hmm.
revive the spirits of the light. So once they bring the light back to Hyrule, Link turns back into his original form. Now, in order to defeat Zant, Midna says, like, oh, there's this thing called the Fused Shadow. It has the dark power that the interlopers used to have. We can use that to defeat Zant. So they go to get the pieces of that. Now, as they journey on, um, Link occasionally gets sword training from a character known as the Hero Spirit.
Okay.
That's who you see on the slide. His wolf form is on the right. He has a wolf form too.
Oh, okay. Cool,
And
cool.
on the left, yeah, it's cool. And on the left, that's what he looks like. Now, uh, according to the official wiki and like official stuff, that is actually the same Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. But it's just like why he looks that way is like he was forgotten for so long. He never had to fight Ganondorf. Like usually heroes are remembered by their stories, right?
Right.
And there was no story for him because he warned them about Ganondorf and kind of just faded into nothingness. So he waited like centuries and centuries until he became a skeleton. Kind
Damn.
of looks like Stalfos. Stalfos are like skeleton enemies in the game. But yeah, he teaches Link a bunch of cool like movements. One of them being like the finishing blow, so he can stab Ganondorf in the heart. Um, and this is cool too because this is the first time ever that two different like incarnations of Link actually are face to face. So it's a cool thing. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. There's actually like I saw a couple of YouTube videos about this too, just talking about the hero spirit because it's an interesting part of the lore. Um, now, uh, they just finish assembling the fused shadow, Midnight and Link, and Zant ambushes them. He curses Link back into his wolf form. He uses something known as a shadow crystal. All I can find about it was that like it's just an item that allows Link to turn into wolf form. There wasn't a lot of information about it, so it's just like a thing. Um, he also steals that fused shadow and he hurts Midna like fatally. He actually like blasts her body, I think, with light or something. And Link takes Midna to Princess Zelda, and Princess Zelda actually pours her spirit into Midna to save her life.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So but that's at her own expense. So Zelda's body disappears when she does that. So, um, but Midna is she's good to go. So they're like, hey, we got to look for the Master Sword now. In this game, it's located in a place called the Sacred Grove, which is where the Temple of Time used to be. So, if you remember, like way back, you know how they would find the sword usually in the Temple of Time. So, they're following that. It's just now the temple's no more, it's just a grove. So, when they get the sword, Link's curse is broken. And they decide, okay, we need to find Zant. Zant is in the Twilight Realm. Well, the only thing we can use to find him is the Mirror of Twilight, which he broke. So that's what you see in the slide here is the completed mirror with that little portal. So they're just gathering the pieces to basically go into the Twilight Realm and fight Zant. They do that. They beat him. Uh, Midna takes back the Fuse Shadow. She kills Zant. Zant also at that time reveals that Ganondorf has been reborn, and he kind of calls Ganondorf his master. And he's like, "My master will bring me back," which that's cap. Ganondorf's Ganondorf doesn't care about anyone but himself. So,
Yeah.
but then they realize, oh, if Ganondorf's back, uh, Zelda's probably in danger. Like the castle's in danger. So they go to Hyrule Castle where Zelda
Oh.
is possessed by Ganondorf. So this is a term called puppet Zelda. I think she looks sick, like
Mm.
because I like cyber stuff, like it looks kind of cyber-like.
Yeah.
But yeah, he takes her body and Link has to fight Zelda. Um, he defeats him, and then Midna actually uses the fused shadow to free Zelda from Ganondorf's grasp. But then he turns into Ganon, and then they have to continue the battle. So when he turns into Ganon, he usually is like a beast. So in this, he kind of looks like a big kind of pig-like with huge horns.
Mm.
Um, but they defeat that Ganon in that form, and then after that battle, actually, the power that Zelda gave Minna to save her life comes back to her, and so she's revived. So Zelda's good to go now. She's no longer a puppet. She's all good. Minna's good. Everybody's good. Um, they leave the castle, and Ganondorf is out there on his horse, and they gotta fight him one more time, which is
God
it's
damn.
crazy. Yeah, this man does not quit. But at that time, in that battle, because he's got like a bit of a hole in his chest, so eventually Link stabs him in the heart and kills him with the Master Sword. So they're like, hooray! Midna gets turned back to her normal self. She returns to the Twilight Realm. As you can see in the slide here, when she returns, she's kind of like fading away. But another thing she does is she shatters the Mirror of Twilight. So that way there's no link between the two worlds anymore. I like to think it's because she's like, I don't want some shit like this to happen again. Like, let's just
Right.
live our lives and, like, whatever. So these were the two probably longest games. This last game that we're going to talk about, Four Sword Adventures. The storyline's not too crazy. I did want to bring up one thing. Hundreds of years after Ganondorf dies, um, the sentence in the wiki goes, the people of Hyrule had reconciled with the Gerudo, and it seemed for a while that peace would prevail in the land. Now, Gerudo, if you remember, that's the tribe where Ganondorf comes from. They're a desert tribe. Now, there is a really popular fan theory, and I wanted to bring it up because it's not verified, but I think it's pretty valid. So, all Nintendo does was bring up the sentence, but like, okay, what's the context? Well, after Ocarina of Time, that's when Link accuses Ganondorf of being a bad guy. And the fan theory is that after Ocarina of Time, before Majora's Mask, they have a war between the Gerudo and Hyrule. Because, I mean, how would you feel if like some kid just shows up and is like, your leader's a bad guy. We can't trust him. And I'd be like, what the hell? Like, I
Right.
I totally understand that. So there's a fan theory that there is a Gerudo War. They fight about it, but then like now relations are good. So I think having that happen and then thinking about this now, it makes sense. But again, it's not anything official. It's just a fan theory.
Mm.
Um, uh, Ganondorf, Link, Zelda, they always, resurrect. Or reincarnate. Sorry. Um, A new Ganondorf was born in the Gerudo tribe, a reincarnated version. From the jump, the Gerudo, they have this pyramid, It's just a pyramid that their local laws say you're not supposed to go in there. There's a trident in there. Do not go. Don't touch it. Ganondorf decides to steal the trident because
Of
he's
course.
garbage. The trident, there's no um in a lot of battles he'll have a trident and he'll like use it as a weapon, but I don't see it having any sort of like special magical powers. I think he just thinks he can use it to kill Link, and that's really it. So, because I try to research that too, I was like, why steal that in particular? But Ganondorf is just, Oh yeah, and on the slide, it's just a picture of him in a pyramid. There was a video that I watched. I think it was by Commonwealth. I'll link it in our description just because I used it as a reference a lot. He had a lot of like good images, for this in between stuff
Mm.
that I didn't see in any games. So I like this because it was like Ganondorf looking like he was in a pyramid. Um, he also steals something known as the Dark Mirror, which this mirror is like a prison for a dark tribe that a very long time ago they invaded the kingdom. They didn't say what tribe, but it was just long ago. Um, they did that, and this mirror can reflect the evil heart of its bearer. So whoever has it can create their own, evil stuff. So he decides to make a dark copy of Link, Shadow Link, and that's what you can see. I'm sorry the slide is not good quality. It was really hard for me to find like nice pictures from Four Sword Adventures. I think because it was on the GameCube,
Mm.
so it's like hard to get like, 4K pictures. Um, so he creates a dark Link. This slide is kind of a spoiler. Do you recognize the guy? We talked about him a while ago. I don't know if you
Uh.
recognize him.
Uh.
He looks familiar.
Yeah.
If you don't, so Vati was the main
Oh.
the main antagonist in Four Swords. Ganondorf wants to bring him back. I don't know. Maybe he's lonely. Maybe he needs a friend. I don't know. But Vati is still sealed in the Four Sword. So Ganondorf wants that seal broken, of course. The way Four Sword Adventure starts, there's a bunch of dark clouds, and Zelda is like sussed out about it. So she gathers six shrine maidens to renew that seal on Vati because she's like, I feel like something bad's gonna happen. Let's just check this out. Excuse me. Um, while they do that, Dark Link shows up, seals them away in a dark crystal, so they're each like crystallized, including Zelda. And he also tricks Link into drawing the sword from its pedestal. And when he does that, Link splits into four, just like in Four Swords.
Mm.
And then Vati gets released from his prison, which you can see in the slide. So when this happens, the six maidens are like scattered all over. Link wakes up, and in this game too, the owl is his guide. So, the owl has a name. I found out it's Keapora Gaebora. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's spelled really interesting. But the owl just kind of tells him like, "Hey, this is what happened. You got to get the maidens back." So he rescues the shrine maidens little by little. Um, finds out that Ganondorf was the one behind this all along. So
What?
he's like, "What? I had no idea." Well, it's always like it's a new Link, so you gotta give him props. He didn't know.
Right, right.
But one of the maidens tells Link that there are four royal jewels, which are needed to reach the realm of the heavens. The realm of the heavens is where the Palace of the Winds is. If you remember, that was Vati's main palace in Four Swords.
Mm.
And in this particular case, this is where he's keeping Zelda. So it's in like the sky and clouds above Hyrule, but that's where Zelda is. So the four jewels, again, like other games, like they had the colors, I think, like red, green, blue. I just can't remember what the last one is, but similar to like others where they're like the colors of the elements. So he goes around looking for them, and they are actually defended by the knights of Hyrule. They used to be knights, but and the Knights of Hyrule would just protect Hyrule. That's what knights do. But Ganon used Shadow Link to open rifts into the Dark World and turn them into like big Stalfos, like the skeleton knights. So this is actually a still from the game when he's like fighting one of the knights. But
Okay.
Link goes around, he gets all the four jewels, he gets up to the palace, he fights Vati, he fights Ganon, and this is what you see. This is like one of the final stills of the game when they use the sages, or I'm sorry, in this game they're not sages, they're maidens. But he uses the maidens to seal them away in the Four Sword, and then that's how the timeline ends. It ends with Four Sword Adventures. He seals them away, and that's really it. Like beyond that, I'll close the presentation because there's nothing else to talk about. But yeah, beyond that, like how did my stream go? Tell us about your streaming experience. Oh, Discord. I hate when you've seen that before, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like the smiley face and like I should do that for the presentation for you. How did the presentation go?
Make me circle one.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I know it's just three games, but it's
It was a
like
lot.
it was a lot. Again, like not knowing even me, like when I first played Majora's Mask, I was like, okay, who's the Skull Kid? Who's the salesman? What is Termina? Like there's just
Right.
it's just another you know, the story and the story is very different than other games. Like Four Sword Adventures, very similar to the first one. Um, in that game, actually, you can play multiplayer. So it's a GameCube game, but
Oh.
the multiplayer you use like Game Boy advances with like this linking thing.
Oh, I know that. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So the multiplayer was kind of challenging. But yeah, I don't think I ever played that one, but I played through Twilight Princess. I love the game. I love the music. I love everything about it. Majora's Mask, I still have yet to finish. I think I'll come back to it once I get my Nintendo 64 back. Um, but yeah, it was just really frustrating to like make it to the first dungeon and then be like, your time's up. You lost all your
Yeah,
progress.
I
I
would
was like,
be mad as hell too. I'd be like, all right, you
yeah,
know what? Never playing this game again.
yep. I was like, this game is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I understand, and since I've played so many of the other ones, like I really want to try that final boss battle. Like I feel like, hi Rocky. I see Rocky.
Come here.
Hi. I miss him. I love petting him.
I had to clean up a hairball today when I got home. I was like, that's
Oh,
nice.
really?
Yeah.
At least it wasn't puke. That's
Yeah,
good.
just hair.
Oh. Yeah, so let me know what you think. I mean, hi Rocky. He's like, he's just hi Rocky. Can you see me? He doesn't.
He's like,
Hello?
I don't care.
Yeah, doesn't care. Um, yeah. What was your favorite game of the three, you think? Which one did you find the most interesting? Based
Uh,
on the stories.
the mask one seemed very interesting. Like with
Yeah,
the whole moon coming and like you got 3 days. I wouldn't play it. I'd watch someone play it though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting.
But
it's a
but
cool
the
concept that they
Twilight
came up
one,
with.
the art looks
Hmm.
really, really cool.
Yeah,
The
it kind of makes me want to play it again.
four sword one.
Yeah. I don't think that game, I don't think Four Sword Adventures is known to be like one of the best Zelda games, you know.
Mm.
It's not it's not like Triforce Heroes bad, because that game was special. But
Oh,
yeah, I feel like,
he froze for a
oh,
sec. Okay,
yeah,
you're
you
back.
froze.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is
No.
Rocky? Oh,
That's
oh,
that's what he does
he's
when
falling.
no, he likes
He's
to
just
lay
falling.
back there. So now I have to move forward so he can lay back there.
Oh, as long as he's fine with it.
I'm not
Maybe it's
fine with
cozy
it.
for him. Oh my God. That's so funny.
Mm.
Yeah, so what was I gonna say? Yeah, Four Sword Adventures is not considered like the best or the worst. It's just kind of in the middle. Um, the next presentation, when we're going to talk about the adult timeline, is very interesting because you have. At first, I did a little bit of research just to kind of prepare myself, and I was like, oh, because it's three games: Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks.
Okay.
And I thought Wind Waker was going to be the only one that I'm like, oh, I'll have to explain a lot, but also Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I kind of have to. I was like, God damn it. But it's cool to revisit those games. So I've played all three of those games.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I played all three. It's been a while, of course, so I'll have to kind of refresh because I already forgot Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Like I remember Wind Waker a little bit,
Mm.
but it's hard like when it's been years since you've played a game,
Right.
to remember. Because I remember watching, I did watch like a video on the explanation of the story a little bit, and I was like, oh, that happens. So it'll be interesting to go over it. And I'm thinking potentially of doing just an episode on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom
Ooh.
theory because there's nothing official except for, yes, those games are set way in the future.
Mm.
So then it's a matter of where do they sit in the timeline? Does the timeline converge into one again? Is it under a specific one? So it would be very interesting to kind of uh, pick apart the different ones and see. So by the end of this, I think over half of our episodes will be about Zelda.
Hey, I
Just
enjoy listening to the pod, like to like you explain stuff. It's
yeah.
like very interesting and like learning. I love learning new stuff, so it's been very interesting. And I've always wanted to know about the Zelda stuff, but I was
hmm
always like overwhelmed with how much stuff
So much.
is
Even
out
like
there.
researching is much.
Yeah.
But I also enjoy it because I mean, that's my username is from Zelda.
Mm.
I love the games, like so it was one of those things too where I had Hyrule Historia. I think it's still in my storage, but I never like fully read through the book. So it's kind of nice to go through all this stuff and kind of just get an understanding. I haven't seen any like content where it's really from like step zero.
Mm.
A lot of the stuff I've seen is people assume you know who the characters are, which
Yeah.
is like,
Which,
that's fair, right? Because a
but
lot of
some people don't, and they wanna. It's
yeah, they
hard.
just want to learn.
Yeah.
So I hope, yeah, I hope this was beneficial. I love hearing comments on
Oh,
other people's theories. The Zelda Reddits are very fascinating. Like people, you'll see walls of text like this of a theory that they
dang.
came up with evidence, and then people like dissecting it. It's kind of, so it's some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the child timeline episode. Next week we'll be diving into the adult timeline. So stay tuned and like and subscribe and all that fun stuff and be kind to each other. Be nice. It doesn't hurt anyone to be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just smile at some. Well, maybe not. Maybe people think you're weird.
Yeah, smiling
So,
sometimes at people is kind of weird. Don't.
yeah, it's a little sus.
Yeah,
You
just
go up to someone. Zorla and Vicky told me to be nice. Here's five
and
dollars.
and smile. So it's like,
And they're like
oh,
in the comments like, "Hey, I got robbed."
yeah,
I'm just kidding. I hope that doesn't happen to anyone. Sorry. All right, well, we'll see you guys next week and bye.
bye.